You'd think 5 acres of open land, a gravel road, and the nearest neighbor half a football field away would buy you peace. That's why I left the suburbs. No more barking dogs, lawnmower wars, or nosy neighbors with too much time on their hands. I wanted quiet, freedom, a place to breathe instead. I inherited a different kind of nightmare, one wrapped in paperwork, rules, and pastel-colored newsletters. The Coyote Ridge Homeowners Association. It wasn't even supposed to affect me. My realtor said the property bordered the HOA but wasn't officially part of it. The paperwork was vague, but I'd trusted his word. That was my first mistake. My name's Tom Kinley, 43, widowed, semi-retired contractor. Moved here with my dog, Huck, and a couple of dreams involving chickens, sunsets, and building a life no one could meddle with. 2 weeks after moving in, I installed my pride and joy, a custom-built mailbox, shaped like a '65 Mustang hood, solid, weather-treated steel, matte black with chrome accents, and an American flag decal. It sat atop a heavy-duty post sunk deep in concrete. Functional art, I called it. 3 days later, it was gone. Not vandalized, removed, dug up clean. Post and all. At first I thought it was theft, but the next morning I found a letter duct taped to my front door. Greater than violation notice. Unauthorized mailbox design. You are in violation of Article 6, Section B of the HOA Architectural Code. Please install an approved mailbox within 7 days. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines. No return address. Just a Coyote Ridge HOA header and a printed signature. President Martha Fenwick. I drove down to the HOA office, a tidy brick building nestled inside the cookie-cutter part of the neighborhood. The receptionist wore a smile so tight it looked painful. "I'm not even in your HOA," I said, placing the letter on the counter. "Your folks stole my property." She tapped her keyboard, then frowned. "Mr. Kinley, your deed was annexed into Coyote Ridge 5 years ago. You're on our books. You signed at closing." I hadn't, or I hadn't realized it. Buried in the legalese, somewhere between page 36 and a dozen initials, was the second mistake I'd made. I stormed out, furious but determined. I built a new mailbox, this time with even thicker steel, bolted directly into a concrete slab. No flair, no chrome, just utility. It lasted for days. When I came back from town, I found it mangled on the ground like it had been struck by a wrecking ball. And that night, Huck started barking like mad around 4 a.m. I stepped onto the porch with my flashlight and caught the tail end of a black SUV driving off. The next morning, another letter, greater than second notice. Failure to comply will incur a $500 fine. Repeat offenses may result in HOA enforcement action. No signature this time. Just the same cold header at the top, Coyote Ridge, HOA. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about mailboxes. It was about power, control. Someone in that HOA probably. This Martha Fenwick wanted to make an example of me. They saw a new guy on the edge of their territory, a man who didn't bow, didn't ask permission, didn't decorate with beige. They weren't going to stop, so I didn't replace the mailbox this time. I installed a trail cam on the oak across the road and started watching. 3 nights later they came back. 2 men in navy polos marked HOA enforcement. One held a crowbar, the other carried bolt cutters. No hesitation, no guilt. They pried and hammered and worked in rhythm like they'd done this before. I didn't stop them. I recorded every second. At dawn, I watched the footage with a mug of black coffee and Huck at my feet. My heart wasn't pounding with rage, was simmering, focused. This wasn't just about a mailbox anymore. This was about the line, the one they just crossed. I didn't sleep that night. The footage looped in my head to self-appointed enforcers in HOA polos tearing up my property like it was their birthright. The one with the crowbar moved with confidence, like he'd done this a dozen times before. He never looked over his shoulder, never hesitated. That wasn't enforcement. That was a message, and I heard it loud and clear the next morning. I walked into the county sheriff's office, armed with a video, photos, timestamps, and a printout of my property deed. Deputy Wilson was polite, young, and clearly uncomfortable. "Look, Mr. Kinley, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying it's murky. HOAs operate under civil authority. Technically, if your deed includes the HOA clause, they can take certain actions so long as they follow procedure." "Procedure?" I snapped. "What part of crowbar at 3 a.m. sounds procedural to you?" He sighed. "If you want to press charges for trespass or property damage, you'll have to file a civil suit, but we don't usually intervene unless there's physical harm or a criminal act." "Sorry, civil suit, great." I didn't want court dates and lawyer fees. I wanted justice, or at least enough of a deterrent to make them think twice, and I had no illusions. This wasn't going to stop with mailboxes that night. I drove through the neighborhood, slow and observant. Cookie-cutter homes, identical mailboxes, pre-approved paint palettes. It looked peaceful, uniform, controlled, but behind those blinds and manicured hedges, I knew there were people like me, people who'd been pushed too far. That's when I saw her, Martha Fenwick, perfect white slacks, a matching cardigan, and a clipboard clutched like a scepter. She was walking down Sycamore Lane, inspecting someone's lawn like she owned the soil beneath it. She paused in front of a house with a ceramic gnome in the yard and scribbled furiously later. I'd learned that the gnome belonged to an 84-year-old widow who'd been fined $150 for unauthorized ornamentation. Martha wasn't a leader, she was a tyrant. The next HOA meeting was 3 days later. I showed up 10 minutes early. The community center smelled like folding chairs and lukewarm coffee. There were maybe 20 people there, most of them older, quiet, polite. When the meeting opened for comments, I stood. I have footage of 2 men in HOA uniforms trespassing on my property and destroying my mailbox twice. I played the video on a projector I brought from my workshop. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. Martha, sitting front and center in a lavender pantsuit, didn't flinch. That footage, she said smoothly, shows authorized removal of a non-compliant structure, as allowed under Article 6. Section B, you mean breaking and entering with a crowbar. If you hadn't refused to comply with our notices, I'm not in your HOA, I said, holding up the deed. Your annexation line ends 40 feet from my mailbox. She smiled coldly. Our records disagree, but you're welcome to take it up in arbitration. The motion was called. The board voted unanimous. My mailbox was officially declared a public nuisance, and just like that, the matter was resolved. Only, it wasn't. Back home, I sat in the dark with Huck at my side, a blueprint spread across my kitchen table. The mailbox was gone again, but now I knew what I was up against. I wasn't dealing with bureaucracy, I was dealing with people who used rules like weapons. If the law wouldn't help me, I'd help myself. That night I called Eli. Eli McCready, former Air Force engineer, retired metalworker and one hell of a tinkerer. We met years ago on a contract job welding weatherproof structures in Montana. If anyone could build what I had in mind, it was him. You want a mailbox that what? Exactly. It's back, I said. Legally non-lethal, but enough to make sure no one touches it twice. He paused. Then he chuckled. All right, cowboy, I'm in. The plan was simple. Build a mailbox that could take a hit and deliver one. Not a trap, not a weapon. Just a deterrent. Something that said, this is my land. You don't get to decide what stands here. I started sourcing the materials. Steel plate, reinforced tubing, hydraulic components. I cleared a space in my workshop, covered the windows, and got to work. If they wanted to play games, fine. But they had no idea what kind of game I played. The mailbox took 3 weeks to build. Eli showed up in his rusted-out F-150 with welding gear, blueprints, and a cooler full of bad beer. We set up shop in my barn, working late into the night under hanging bulbs and the scent of scorched metal. Every cut, weld, and bolt had purpose. You're building a tank, he muttered one night, sweat streaking through the soot on his brow. Correction, I replied, tightening a bracket. I'm building a warning. We weren't constructing a weapon that was importantly, eagerly, ethically. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Just make sure the next time those HOA goons reached for my property, they thought twice. The core was a pinched steel shell, shaped like a standard mailbox to keep up appearances. Inside, we installed a pressure-sensitive switch beneath the lid. If someone tampered with it, say tried to pry it open or smash it, a hydraulic system would trigger a rapid extension of 2 steel plates, slamming outward with about 30 pounds of force. Enough to startle, enough to bruise, not enough to break bones. We anchored the entire unit to a concrete base sunk 4 feet into the ground and bolted with industrial fasteners. If someone wanted to remove it, they'd need tools, time, and probably a backhoe. By the end of the 3rd week, it gleamed under the sun like a fortress. We painted it a modest charcoal gray with my street number engraved cleanly across the front. Nothing flashy, no chrome, no Mustang hood, just defiance. Remind me, Eli said, wiping his hands, why we're not just installing a trail cam and suing their pants off. Because they'd win, I said. They've got money, connections, and a legal clause in a binder somewhere that makes them think they own everything, but they don't own me. Eli chuckled and patted the box. Well, partner, let's see if this baby earns her keep. That night, I installed a new trail cam high up in a pine tree, cloaked in foliage, with infrared motion sensors and a direct line to my phone. Then I waited. 3 days passed. Nothing, not a tire track, not a whisper of a Ford Explorer. Then, on the 4th night, just after 2 a.m., Huck growled low and steady from the foot of my bed. My phone buzzed. Motion detected. I tapped the feed. 2 men approached the mailbox, same navy polos, same crowbar and bolt cutters. The leader, the one I'd seen before, walked with the easy confidence of someone who thought the world bent to his will. He raised the crowbar and wedged it beneath the lid. What click? Whump. The hydraulic arms deployed with a mechanical snarl, slamming the plates outward. The crowbar ricocheted out of his grip and he yelped loud. His partner stumbled backward, nearly falling into the ditch. The camera caught it all. Every flailing limb, every panicked retreat. They scrambled into their SUV and tore off, taillights bouncing in the dark. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the porch. By morning, the video was clipped, captioned, and quietly uploaded to a private neighborhood forum. My mailbox enforces itself now. The response was immediate. Dozens of likes, comments, private messages from neighbors I'd never met. They did the same thing to me last year. They fined me $500 for a basketball hoop. You're a legend. By noon, the video had leaked to a larger Facebook group dedicated to rogue HOA behavior. By evening, a local news station called asking for an interview. I declined. This wasn't about 15 minutes of fame. It was about drawing a line. That afternoon, Martha herself arrived at my gate in a pearl-white Lexus, red-faced and bristling. She didn't even get out, just leaned on her horn until I strolled up. Huck padding along beside me. That device is dangerous. She snapped through the window. So is trespassing, I replied, calm and flat. There are signs posted. Camera footage. Audio recordings. You might want to tell your boys to stay off my land. This isn't over, she hissed. It is for you. She peeled away in a puff of gravel and indignation. I turned back to the house, feeling the strange calm that comes when you know you're finally standing your ground. The mailbox stood untouched that night, and the next. Peace is strange after war. Quiet feels louder. Every rustle of leaves outside the window, every dog bark at midnight makes you wonder, are they coming back? But the mailbox stood. Day after day, week after week. No more midnight visitors. More threat letters duct taped to my door. Just silence from the HOA, except silence isn't surrender. 3 weeks after the incident, I got a certified letter in the mail delivered, ironically, to the very mailbox they once tried to destroy. Greater than final notice. Cease and desist. Your property now contains a structure deemed a mechanized hazard per HOA safety guidelines. You are instructed to dismantle the mailbox or face escalating daily fines and possible legal action. They had guts. I'd give them that, but I had something better. Proof. I compiled a file, video evidence of the break-ins, time-stamped footage of the enforcers, copies of the previous notices, a log of every encounter. I added printouts of neighbor testimonials from the forum, statements about similar harassment, excessive fines, and property interference. Then I made one last trip, the county clerk's office. The woman behind the glass looked surprised as I slid the file through. You filing a complaint? No, I said. I'm filing a petition. Turns out, Coyote Ridge's expansion 5 years ago had never been properly recorded with the county. The annexation that supposedly gave them authority over my property, null and void, buried in a folder in some lawyer's desk drawer, never officially stamped, never entered into public record, which meant every warning, fine, and enforcement action was a bluff. Illegal. I called in a favor from an old friend, Matt Jefferson, investigative reporter with a nose for HOA corruption. Within days, the story was everywhere. Greater than rogue HOA harasses homeowner outside jurisdiction. Gets mailbox to small town. HOA stepped outside its boundaries literally and found itself in hot water after targeting a local resident with illegal fines and property destruction. The homeowner's response. A mailbox that hits backhand, a case that may have county-wide implications. The backlash was swift. Residents started speaking up. Former board members came forward. Martha Fenwick's carefully curated empire cracked under the weight of its own arrogance. At the next HOA board meeting, held in a much quieter, tenser community center, residents demanded her resignation. She refused, so they voted. Unanimous. Martha was out, but I wasn't done yet. 2 weeks later, I filed a formal civil suit for property damage, harassment, and emotional distress. The HOA tried to settle out of court. I declined. I don't want your hush money, I told their lawyer. I want a judgment on record. It took 4 months. But I won. They paid for the destroyed mailboxes, the legal fees, and a little extra enough to install a solar-powered camera system, replace my barn's roof, and fund Huck's very expensive steak habit. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the principle. It was the message out here. Property means something. So does peace. But if someone tries to take either from you, tries to bully you with bylaws and fake authority, you don't fold. You build a mailbox that hits back. Epilogue. A year later, I still live on the edge of Coyote Ridge. The HOA has a new board. Folks, mostly they leave me alone. The mailbox still stands, untouched and gleaming. Sometimes, cars slow down to take a look. One guy even drove 2 hours just to snap a selfie with it. Huck's older now, a little slower, but he still perks up when a vehicle passes after dark. And me, I spend most mornings on the porch with coffee in hand, watching the sun rise behind the pines. There's a new sign at the end of the driveway now, steel-plated, bolted to the ground, private property. Mailbox bites back. It's not just a warning anymore, it's a promise.